Sure, brother.
Cheers, my friend. Thank you
Recording in
for
progress.
sitting back down with me. And why don't right off the top, why don't you just remind folks who you are and where they can find your content online?
Happy to be here. My name is Michael Lasley. I am the Chief Content Director for Illinois News Joint. We post a new Illinois product review every day. We also cover the politics and the culture, and we have a bustling event calendar. Um, yeah, I'm keeping things right there, but also covering all kinds of other things on my own uh, social media, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on there.
Yeah. And not to single out Oregonics or whatever, but wow, what a name for a product.
The Super Boof.
Yeah. I only
Yeah,
say that because it's like somebody had to be like it,
it's having its year, man.
oh, is it like a popular strain? Okay. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I was about to make a joke.
No,
People always say
no,
Illinois dispensary weed is like boof or not good. And I'm like, wow, they're really like leaning into that, you know?
no. It's that's a industry name right now. Super Boof came out of California. It's
Okay.
originally bred by Blockhead. Fantastic strain.
Gotcha. Yeah. As you can see, folks, plenty of content and it's all Illinois focused. So
Yeah,
if it's Illinois cannabis content you want, Illinois News Joint is the place. We'll have the link in the description, but it's illinoisnewsjoint.com.
check us out.
So
We post. We're constantly changing stuff. We just went through a redesign. Um, Big focus this year on events and all the stuff that's coming down. So I really do think it's going to be a great year for the industry. I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to be in the industry. I think that's a lot of
yeah.
a lot of the stuff that's missing from people's lives is you know
Yeah.
we've become cynical.
Absolutely. And actually, I didn't even think about that since you just brought it up. I know you have that upcoming event that we've been
That's yeah, that's under wraps still. That's
right. But
yeah.
the idea, like you said, that events could be happening. I'm curious. I know we didn't necessarily plan to talk about this today, but I just saw, people are starting to talk about their legislative priorities. And selfishly, I was hoping this issue would go away, but it's not. People are talking about we need licensing for cannabis events and cannabis consumption. Uh,
Here we go.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the topic? I have some thoughts, maybe you already know them, but I'm just curious. What do you think about this even being a discussion in
I
legislation
mean,
right now?
it's another level of regulation that we currently don't need. Um, I think there are a ton of events that are currently being planned or that were pulled off absolutely successfully in 2023 with open consumption, outdoors, literally
Food,
hundreds of people, food, music, all in
free
one place. I
weed.
mean, yeah, free dabs, free. I was at a place that
We
had
we went to an
free.
event together, didn't we?
Yes, yes, we went to a
Yeah.
couple events together. We were at a couple
Yeah.
events. Yeah, I really do. This was a great year for that kind of thing. I think there is a push. I think there is a I hate to say like there's a positive push for regulation. I think there are people looking for clarity. And I think that is not from our side. It's not from people creating events. It's from municipalities, counties. When I go to a county and I say I can bring 2,000 people here, but you need to let me allow open consumption. They don't. A lot of these folks don't know the laws. I went to a city here in Southern Illinois, or we went to a city in here in Southern Illinois to work on this, and they had to go to their team of lawyers, and it took weeks for them to hash out how we would actually do this and to make sure that it's okay with their city law and county law and Illinois law. It's not clear there. And so we're operating in a gray area, which is awesome for the culture. We can do really, really cool stuff. But I think there is a level of people that do want access to this stuff. There are tourism boards out there that do want access to this stuff that kind of are afraid of it without that extra padding of those regulations.
Yeah. Like you say, and you kind of, the way you started it is exactly, where my concern comes from. It's like we've regulated the shit out of cannabis already. It's like, goddamn, this is the one thing we're they've got a hands-off approach on. And it's like, as a result, it's been going well, at least when you talk to the people that are doing it, like high-minded events and some of those Southern Illinois consumption lounges, they were just able to open up shop. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, they did have
yeah.
local politics to navigate, but they can deal with that because they know those
You can
people.
talk to a county board a lot easier than I can negotiate with the government of Illinois. Where
Right.
do I who do I go to? Who do I talk to? There's no place to start for any kind of business owner, even if you have a large, if you have a large hospitality business, it's still hard for you to go. But you can go to a county board, you can go to a city board, and you can make those arguments.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like you say, I've heard that before as well. It's like people just it just sounds like, yeah, they're hesitant because they feel there's lack of clarity on it. And I don't know, like I say, just when I talk to the people that are currently involved in the space, they're like, don't touch it. It's working. We're making money, you know? But then when you
Yes,
talk to the people that aren't in the space, they say, but we can't make any money because we can't sell food. We can't sell, they say all these things, but then I'm not saying everybody has it figured out, but at least Molly's Joint and OK Cannabis has like a restaurant and are selling food on site. You know what I mean?
it is. Yeah, for sure. It can work in certain places.
Right.
I think a lot of this is enforcement dependent too. I think if you ask the health department of some of those places, if they really wanted to go in and find a violation with the way things are written, I mean, they probably could. There probably are operating businesses that kind of operate yet again in this gray area. We're not inside the law. We're not outside the law. It's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. And to that end, I like that the ones down south just let you bring your own food. So you're either supporting other local businesses, or they could even strategically, like you, to address that concern you just had. Because I definitely thought about that, like having a smoke lounge on the same side as a kitchen, and like, let's be honest, air, it permeates everything. So like,
I mean, like, but come on, there's been bars. I can go over to
true,
Missouri still, and there's bars you smoke inside where there's been cooking for the past century and a half, 2 cent, like forever.
good
There's been
point.
smoke inside buildings and cooking, and people have been fine.
But
Um,
I guess I just wanted to say, like, on both, it seems like there are multiple ways to address that
yeah,
concern, either by doing whatever OK and Molly's are doing, or
split it.
by
Yeah,
right, splitting, exactly.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
by just, yeah, encouraging people to go to other businesses and be like, hey, bring your food here, type of thing.
I think that works better down here, especially because of the OK
Hmm.
Cannabis could, they have a great bakery. They could, they could survive with their food, with the traffic they have down here. A lot harder to do that.
Right. So, anyways, I was just curious because especially if you are getting into the space, Illinois News Joint, like there's nothing, and I know you can't speak completely on
No, no,
Illinois News
no.
Joint,
Yeah.
maybe Jason would want to be here for that conversation, but you get my drift. You get where I'm going. I hope it's like just to
Yeah,
complete the thought. You're getting in and there's nothing stopping you right now. But if people are talking about this shit, like it's possible that it could get more complicated.
I just want to say that I've already been mulling this idea over. It's a lot of cheap property in Southern Illinois. Is all I'll say for now. There's a lot of cheap property with very easy county boards. The entire county I live in, 5,000 people. That's it. The entire county. Yeah, I mean, you,
That's pretty crazy.
you
Yeah.
go and talk to some folks, and it's easy. And especially if you're down here on the border, where you can get, you have these other states that you can kind of ring in.
Hmm.
There's a business argument to be made.
Yeah. So, anyways, again, I didn't really plan to bring that up, but I saw somebody make a post and they were talking about legislative priorities, and one of the things they mentioned, I was like, oh, it's back. Is
It's fucking up events.
yeah,
Oh,
events
sorry.
and consumption. So it's like the
Yeah,
idea that, again, I don't mean to dwell on this any longer, but the idea that there's not enough clarity on how to open up a smoke shop. It's like, but there is though. Look at the Luna Lounge. Look at 3 Mile Hideaway. Just get a tobacco retailer's permit. Let them smoke. you know.
yeah, yeah.
But anyways, it is interesting that I feel like I just wonder what that's going to look like. I know I just said I didn't want to dwell on that any longer, but my last thought is because somebody has been asking why, a lot of people have been asking, why do you need a tobacco retailer's permit? And it's like, because that's the one thing they figured out that they could tax in this consumption equation is the paraphernalia you use. Because they can't,
There's
if you're not selling
there's
cannabis there, you can't tax them by the minute. So,
it's I think that there's Illinois, especially in this, has this mindset of extraction where
yeah.
we have to get something out of everything, every transaction. The government's got to have their take, and so yeah, I think that is baked into every single layer of the law, and so that's kind of how they're getting away with it. Is yes, yet again, the government's getting their take. I've seen events at like breweries and stuff, where obviously the government's getting a tax benefit there. There's a separate tax benefit to running a brewery and stuff. There's a separate tax benefit to there, but they allow smoking in there, so it's kind of this thing that, yeah, that's how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I felt like I just thought of a relevant clip that we can close the loop on that topic, and then maybe we can move on to
What were we talking
rescheduling.
about? Yeah.
Um, Let me just toggle this here. Yeah, this is perfect to close this topic. So I know it's just a joke, and I'm not trying to make more out of this than it is, but it is kind of funny that this is the first line that.
Thank you so much. It is great to see everybody here. How many people from out of town? Oh yeah, love to see that. Okay, so first of all, make sure you spend a lot of money while you're here. Part of my job as governor. We have a lot to see. By the way, we have the best.
We have the
Yeah.
best pizza in the world. We do have the best. I
That's
take
good.
for granted sometimes. Like I've, especially in my trip like to Nevada and stuff, I was looking around for like best pizza places. There wasn't one. I was
No,
like,
there's no good. Yeah, I mean, like, Chicago, New York,
yeah.
Connecticut.
But even from Southern Illinois, like there's of course the cliche
Quattro.
like Casey's, but yeah, you got Quattros, you got. I know I'm gonna get some hate for bringing this up after saying Quattros. It is important that Quattros goes first, uh, but after that, Monocles. I think Monocles is pretty good for like
Monocle's is
just a
fantastic. Monocle's is a Midwest classic. Yeah.
exactly in
Yeah.
Illinois. Yeah, Papa Del's in Champaign. If you've ever been there, I think that's better than Chicago. Any deep dish I've had in Chicago. Ooh, fighting words.
Ooh, shit. Big
Um,
shout out to Marion, Illinois. Benny's Italian Foods is literal right off the square. Little Italian place, been there since the 40s. But they make a pizza that's like a flat, thin crust, real crispy, fantastic. I mean, like it's that or Quattros for me.
Benny's.
Benny's Italian Foods. Next time you are in Southern Illinois, let me know. We will go to Benny's and we will
Hell yeah.
have some pizza and some cannelloni Florentine and hang out in the square at Marion.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Well, let's talk rescheduling, which is kind of why we connected. We were
Yes,
both
yes.
on the same wavelength, and I was like, dude, let's get on here because
A
if
man after
not,
my own heart.
right, if not for our own sanity, also just to like vent, you know what I mean?
Oh, agreed.
Right. So in hopes that maybe somebody sees where we're coming from, but at the end of the day, it'll just feel good to have said these things.
All
So
my Twitter's been for a month now is
yeah,
bitching about
the fucking mania,
misconception.
yeah, what's gonna happen? So anyways, let's just give a little bit of background and feel free to jump in. So in the past, I can't remember if it was in the last year, but in the last year or so, President Biden kind of came out and said, "Hey, it's kind of crazy that marijuana is in the same schedule as heroin and LSD," which wish he wouldn't brought up
Sense.
LSD, but um,
Yeah, we'll
you
bring
know,
that out.
yeah,
We'll get there.
exactly. Yeah.
We'll get
We'll get there. So he's directing HHS to go through the rescheduling process or initiate a process of rescheduling cannabis. And in the same breath, he also like encouraged uh, state the states, like governors and states, to decriminalize cannabis, which I think some did follow the lead and like do some expungements and stuff. And he did something else at the federal level that I don't believe yielded a ton of results, but still just wanted to try to include some of the details. Another thing that you mentioned before we went on the air that I do agree is important to mention is that, just to briefly recap before I mention this detail, President Joe Biden directed HHS. What does that stand for? Something of Human Services. I don't
Health
even
and
know.
Human Services.
Health and Human Services. Thank you. To start the process of rescheduling, which includes I guess some sort of review, and then they pass that information on to the DEA, and they do their process and
I
determine
believe
whether
this
or
is
not.
actually up in the lead up to 22, the lead up to the election, and which I think kind of ties into what a lot of this is. This political maneuvering. And in 22, they kind of initiated that. They talked about the big release of prisoners that they were going to do, that released 0 prisoners, the federal prisoners that were in jail for possession. There weren't any. They're all out now because there weren't any. But yeah, and then after that, now we're leading up to yet again another election here, and we've decided that it's time to do reschedule. We're going to reschedule now. But yeah, this was initiated back in the beginning, back a couple of years ago, where they were going to. He actually just told them to look at it. He never said reschedule.
Right.
That was, there was a possibility that, deschedule and stuff. I remember how elated some folks got that, like, we could completely, we could do all kinds of crazy things or all kinds of wonderful ideas floating around, because he didn't actually say anything. He just had them look at it, review it. And so he came back through, and now we've decided the HSS released their documents after some prodding and after a really roundabout way of doing it. The DEA has stepped in now. They've said, we have the final authority on marijuana because it's part of the Controlled Substances Act. They're totally right. They do. And so they will get to, they have to release theirs. But yet again, Biden appointed this head of the DEA. And so I believe, honestly, this is some political maneuvering that at the right time this year, we're going to say, hey, we're rescheduling. And I'll tell you why I really am reinforcing that idea. There was polling released today, I believe, or at least in the last couple of days, that says that that folks that were informed about this and what this will achieve, even though it's not much, are going to see, Biden saw an 11-point increase in likability and favorability in the polling. And so people see this, it looks like something. It looks like something. You haven't seen any movement in federal marijuana. We have the Cole memo. Hey, shout out. We have the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment, but there's not a ton of real actionable movement. So this looks like something, but as I'm sure we'll discuss, it's not really much.
Yeah. And I guess just for, the sake of doing it, and since it's not that long, let's just take a moment to watch what Joe Biden did say. I found the minute 32-second clip.
Yes.
And by the way, the detail that you did mention that I thought was important for folks, I just want to underscore it in case it flew under their radar. President Biden did appoint, as you said, the what is it, the lead person, Ann Milgram? I don't know.
Head of the DEA, yeah.
Head of the DEA.
Yeah.
So here is the clip.
As I said when I ran for president, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's already legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, to educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences. While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates. So today, I'm taking 3 steps to end this failed approach. First, I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana. There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result of that conviction. My pardon will remove this burden on them. Second, I'm calling on all governors to do the same for state marijuana possession offenses. Third, the federal government currently classifies marijuana as a Schedule I substance, the same as heroin and LSD, and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense. So I'm asking the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate a process to review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Even as federal and local regulations of marijuana change, important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales should stay in place. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
So, right, he did not say rescheduling or descheduling, as you said, which is why for a while there was a little bit of hype on like, which one is it going to be? You know,
It'd be nice.
which can we just really quick, and I want to give you the floor, but I just want to start this with just briefly recapping the first like 6 words he said.
As I said when I ran for president, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana.
So maybe we start there. How does this address that?
So it does not. I mean, yeah, let's be honest, it really doesn't. Rescheduling by itself currently won't change much of the regime that's in place. It's easier probably to talk about what it will change than what it won't. We will see, research will probably come easier. There are some severe restrictions on Schedule I substances that researchers that for years have had problems getting around. There have been some allowances in the last couple of years to allow them to buy medical cannabis and certain things, but we're still not there. And so Schedule III, that would really be fantastic for universities. It's a lot easier to get that kind of DEA license where you can handle and use Schedule III substances as part of studies than it is a Schedule I. It's almost impossible to do that. It took MAPS, you think about almost 30 years now just to get a little movement on that kind of idea. And so it will have that. And then there's the federal tax benefit. And so current marijuana operators in every state in the country that have legal, recreational, legal, medical, fall under something called 280E. The IRS will not allow them to deduct their business expenses as part of their marijuana businesses. And so, like, let's say that you and I, we start up a marijuana shop. We get, blessed by the Illinois government. They give us a license. They say, you guys are just so cool. Here's a cool license. And so we are going to spend $1 million, Colin Mike's weed, and we're going to build out an operational facility. We can't deduct anything on the inside there that we build out, which a normal business can. They say these are expenses. They go against our profitability. And so at the end of the year, you really shouldn't, tax us on this because we're paying out on that. And so marijuana businesses do not enjoy this. And so what this will do is reduce the amount of federal tax money that is received from marijuana businesses because Schedule III substances will not have the same kind of protection. It also will open up the floor for safe banking to be a lot easier to pursue. One of the biggest restrictions there has been the way that the federal government recognizes Schedule I substances. And so this will allow for that to be passed a lot easier. And then outside of that, there's really not much that's going to change. There was even a congressional study that was just released. We were talking about that earlier that says that this will still be federally illegal. The pharmaceutical companies cannot come in and take this over and say you have to go to a pharmacy to get it now. You have to get a doctor's prescription. And people believe that. I don't understand why, because you have to get a drug FDA approved. Typically, there's almost no plant medicines that go through the FDA approval process because of how strict it is, because of how stringent it is, that allow for that to happen. And so yet again, we're left in this kind of gray area. But what this does achieve is it's a great big thing for Biden to trot out on the campaign trail and say, we got him, boys. I've made those promises 4 years ago when I ran for president. And here we go. I'm delivering, kind of. We're not actually doing anything. At the end of the day, what really I think what's going to burst so many people's bubble is that this is what progress looks like. It's
Right.
incremental and it's slow and it's tiny and it's just little pieces. But this is progress.
What's funny is that there's not going to be any competing candidate other than like, I don't mean to like throw a name out there, but like maybe like Robert F. Kennedy that could like intellectually counter this idea. And I don't even know if he could, honestly. I'm just assuming he could because it seems like, from my perspective, he'll get some of those issues at a deeper level than most politicians would, but I could be completely wrong there. So I'm just making shit up, honestly. But like what I'm trying to say is that like he could trot that out, and I don't think anybody would be able to challenge him on that and like really get into the nuance of what we're discussing right now. Like you just said, there are differences for if you're in the business or want to be in the business,
There's
you
already
know.
polls out saying this is going to help him with voters. There's already polls that say this is a positive for Biden. Even when people are told how restrictive it is, what it really doesn't achieve much, they still see it as progress. People who do not spend every day talking about marijuana and reading about marijuana and thinking about marijuana and the industry and the plant and all this other stuff, they really just see this kind of slow moving iceberg, that a few years ago it was legal here, and a few years ago and then it was legal in Colorado, and then it was legal in Illinois, and then it was legal, and it's kind of slowly moving, and the federal government slowly making their decisions. That's what most of the people who shop at dispensaries, most of the people, that's what they see it as. They don't have time to think about
Right.
the intricacies of the federal government or law concerning marijuana at all. I, I've worked behind the counter in dispensaries. I actually currently have a little job right now, taking a little part-time job just to get back behind the counter. I miss that. And so I work with people all the time who come in and ask basic questions about what's happening, don't understand rescheduling at all, because it in the end it doesn't really affect them. You can come in and get your marijuana. It's the people in the industry who are going to have to push this forward and who are going to have to make a big deal about how this is not a big deal.
Yeah. And in some respects, it is nice to see some energy regarding these topics. But as you said, I don't know. There's a lot of like, a lot of people are scared. And the argument that I've made that I saw you shared was like, we're already disregarding the Controlled Substances Act. So why are you worried at all about your state-run programs?
I
If
don't
that's what you're
understand.
worried about. If that's what you're worried
I
about.
think there's always a fear,
Yeah.
especially from people in the cannabis industry,
And
of the
back to
government.
your point about FDA approval and all that stuff, I don't think there's ever going to be, and if there will, I don't think there's ever going to be like a plant-based.
Well, there already has been. That's what people don't know. We have a Pedalex. We have
Well,
these
so
tinctures that
fair,
are like just a THC spray,
right.
but
I'd
that
mean to
doesn't
say there's
deliver.
not going to be like a flour that you get and grind up. And the reason I say that is, and there might be though, there might be, I could be wrong, because just
Well,
like there's like we were
cool
talking.
genetic modifying.
Right, like we were talking about before the show, like there might be, as just like there's Roundup Ready corn, that doesn't prevent you from growing corn or consuming corn. It's just that whatever company owns that Roundup Ready corn, right?
The
So
problem with that is like, even plants, we'd have to get to such a level of sameness,
right,
such a level of uniformity across products, and that's why there are products that are derived from marijuana. We've had Marinol since 1988. That is a
yeah,
synthetic THC. It was created by the pharmaceutical companies. This is what they can create. Given the freedom to do it, this is what they can make. It does not compare to what the plant medicine is. And so I don't see the threat. That's your threat. It's been there for years.
right. And that's kind of the point I was trying to work around to, is like what they are able to make is a homogeneous solution that is standardized. But when you're talking about experience, and if you know what the original cannabis experience is, which is what a lot of these people seem to be upset about and afraid that we're going to lose, you know that, yeah, those solutions that they come up with, I don't know this like from a first person perspective, but I've heard about what I think you just alluded to, that like Marinol, for example, is not great. Like you'd think, oh, 100% THC, it's going to be awesome. And it's like, no.
Incredibly unenjoyable. So there's a video from like can't remember. It was very early Vice when they were doing really very interesting things. You have to go look at it. I'll find it and send it to you. But a woman smoked marijuana, describes the experience and does it on camera. Then they inject her with like, I can't remember how much pure THC. And she has just the most absolute freak out just a super anxiety attack. And they had to give her like, benzodiazepines to calm her down. It was almost like some kind of a borderline psychotic reaction from the straight THC. Is that's the plant is a full compound. The plant is there's 400 plus chemicals that occur inside the plant. You're just not there technically yet. We can't do what Mother Nature can do yet. I believe that someday, 50, 60, 75 years, totally possible. We're not even close.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I could see, and I don't know exactly how they'd pull it off, because obviously there's like nuances to this, but if I could just try to put myself in a doomsday scenario about this rescheduling thing, the only thing I can like come up with in my conspiracy theory brain is that it won't be immediate. Like, okay, so pharmaceutical brands will get involved and slowly but surely they'll develop these, like I say, stale solutions that don't really meet the needs of any consumer. Maybe they meet the needs of some like medical purposes, like specific narrowly focused medical purposes. But I think, like, just to be a conspiracy theorist, it would be like a few years and they'd like start bankrolling a bunch of cash and they'd be like, all right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go after like cannabis. Like it's going to take a little bit, but they're going to be like, all right, this black market, it's so dangerous. Like use all the tactics that people have been using with like Delta 8 and everything. Just be like, we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what they're using, stuff like that. But I just want to acknowledge the shortcomings even in my conspiracy theory. Like that would require dismantling these ideas of the state-run markets again. You'd have to somehow prove that like the testing is bad, or I don't know like how they'd pull it off. But
I just don't think there's going to be. There was recreational, there, here's one of those things that like we're not going to get to that market level. People have to start comparing it to alcohol. There used to be recreational alcohol. There during Prohibition, there was medicinal alcohol, and that's how some of these places stayed open. It's like literally, it had this whole thing, and actually there are still hospital codes. My mother told me that she was a nurse for years and years. There's still hospital insurance codes for beer to get people out. So this stopped the DTs, to stop people from going into detox. There's actually insurance codes, health codes, so you can put in people's insurance for beer.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we'll get to that. We'll get to that kind of point. We're like, in a kind of weird about way. Yeah, you can do it. You can kind of get marijuana in the medical system. The insurance will kind of pay for it if you code it right eventually. But there'll still be a thriving recreational market that has its own thing, that does its own thing, that is its own world. People don't realize that the cat's out in the bag. People do not see there are billions and billions and billions of dollars moves things in a way that people just don't understand. That's what I think the fear is unfounded. I think that the government sees the value in this for their own profitability, and I don't think locking it down is the way to go. I don't think they see a lot of issues with the current expansion, and so this is kind of where we're at.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if, like, do you think these companies will get involved in that space? That's another thing that people say, that they like somehow make a relation. Like, okay, now this big company is going to be in big pharma. Like, do you think they're just going to kind of stay in the state game, or do you think they're going to try to like make some moves and get a Schedule 3 license? Because, like you say, it's kind of easier to get.
Yet again, I can't get FDA approval on a plant.
Right.
I can get FDA approval maybe for like a narrow thing for seizures. I could 100% see a cannabis-based medicine for seizures that's based on some oils that could be the same uniform thing every time.
Do you think they'll do something like that? Do you think they'll like get a contract with like a college or some, however the hell that works.
I think 100% that will. I think 100% that will happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it'll be the state guys. Probably be the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
They'll do a little bit more experimentation.
Yeah.
But we're not going to shut down the recreational market. We're not going to turn off billions and billions of dollars. We're going to shut all these states. We're going to take away all their money because we've decided we're going to FDA restrict. Like it just doesn't make any sense. This is what incremental progress looks like. It's kind of disappointing, to be honest, but this is what it is. It's going to be slow and it's going to be painful, and yet again, people love to use this for the reelection, especially the Democrats, especially over the last 20 years since I've been interested in politics. That we're always trotting out this idea of marijuana legalization or possible decrim or doing something with it. But they're keeping a little bit so they can always do something in 2 more years or in 4 more years when we have to run for president again. What do you come out with next time? Now we're scheduled 5, bros. Now we made a new schedule. We've created the marijuana schedule. All right, now we're going to put it under the ATF. All right, in 10 years, where are we going to be at? That's what this is. It's keeping a little bit to your chest so that, you've always got another card to play when it comes to marijuana, because with the voters, it's a big issue. Almost 80% of Americans, including Republicans and almost all age groups, are pro legalization, or at least medical legalization, at least some form of much more liberal than what we are now with the plant. And so it has a value politically, and they're going to squeeze that one. And they're going to get every last single drop out of this issue that they possibly can. I really believe that's what this is.
Yeah. Man, you're a fountain of optimism tonight, Lasley. I think we both are.
This is how I really feel about the industry. I'm so positive about the industry.
Yeah.
I am glowing about it. I tell people all the time, this is a holding period. This is a cash grab right now.
Yeah.
Things will get better. Things will get 100% better. Read about the time right after Prohibition. And again, I always tie it back to alcohol because it's an easy comparable market. People who say it isn't are wrong. Cannabis is much bigger because of the medical applications and other applications, for sure. But at least the base explanation of recreational substance use, alcohol is a good comparison market. And so look right after Prohibition. There was these giant companies for years and years and years that put out pretty subpar product, and then during the 80s, we had this giant craft boom that brought smaller, more interesting, that's where craft IPAs and all this stuff came from. That's eventually what our market will look like. We'll have a big hourglass-shaped market with a bunch of big-ass players up top where you can go down to the gas station, you get a pack of Marlboro Greens or whatever, they're 4% THC or something, and you can also go down to the cannabis club or the grower co-op and meet a farmer who grew this strain that he's been taking care of for years. We're just not there yet. This is part of the march progress. It's going to be slow. I just think that's, when I got to Colorado in 12, I realized how restrictive things were and how slow it was going to be,
Yeah.
There's just a misnomer to the word green, this term green rush. All the money comes rushing in, but then we hit this wall. And that's where we've been for a long time. And, to be honest, it's nice to see a little federal progress.
Yeah. I also just love seeing, as you say, this is a holdout period, and this is just like me. It's hilarious to see these operators squirm because of hemp, because as you say, they're holding out. They want to keep this like artificial system going on where they're protected. And then all of a sudden people start selling like THCA and they're like, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing? You're just selling weed?" Like, I don't even have my shop open yet.
Bro, as somebody who inside reporting on shit on the industry and stuff, people are vicious. People are vile. I mean, they say all kinds of horrible things about hemp operators. It just blows my mind. I'm like, we created this system. We created the world they have to live in. Why would you do this? They're just business people. They got to feed their family, man.
somebody said it. I can't remember. Oh, it was somebody I just spoke to, Stephen Philpott. He'll be on the podcast here soon. In the episode, he said something to the effect of like, what is interesting about this issue is, yeah, that people do go at each other when we have to realize that like we didn't make that rule, the government did. Like, so like why are we going at each other? And it is interesting because I've had talked to some perspectives that had the perspective that you're talking about, where at least as a licensed operator, they were kind of talking shit about the hemp operators and like, wow, you're just gonna fucking sell this direct to consumer? What the fuck, man? We had to go through all this shit. And then they were like, you know what? I'm gonna do this too. Because they realized
Yeah.
like, why not?
Yeah.
You know?
But if you're somebody who's bent over backwards to appease the government to get yourself a license, cost yourself thousands of dollars, tied your family up, you got your entire business up for years, you're kind of tied in this area where you can't really talk a lot of shit about the government. And so who do you go after? The people that you can.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's just part of business. I hate to see that. I listened to a fantastic talk. I believe that you were also there at the Cannabis Symposium last year, Cannabis and Hemp Symposium at
Yeah.
SIUC. Dr. LeMay gave about this tie between, or this competition between the culture, these old head growers, and the current scientific wave of people that are pushing into hemp and cannabis, and how the answer is to work together. You know, how we really want to push this further. We really want to get the most out of this. It's time to start linking up with each other and talking to each other and learning from each other instead of, you know, shitting all over each other's because of wherever you're coming from.
Right.
And instead, you know, it's this real, like, I get this real, you know, Buddhist heartfelt thing of like, you know, connect. We all have this love for the plant, you know, connect with that. You know, outside of everybody's business interests and stuff, we'll get there. But like, connect with the, we all love the plant, you know?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And you know, you kind of touched on this, but I was gonna ask you, just like curious, what is your outlook on this upcoming legislative session? I almost feel like this upcoming one is a just like not even a session because we're approaching an election season. But what do you
Yeah.
think? Do you think anything's gonna happen?
I mean, we're not gonna get,
I know
I
it's
mean, you've
way
already
too
seen
early to
we got
speculate, but
canopy growth out. So, you know, stuff for craft growers, that was a regulatory thing.
yeah, it's crazy how those issues, and I know that that's kind of what they were trying to do. If I take myself back, at least with the craft canopy, when they were pushing for 14,000 and pushing for like they were just looking for clarity on the rules, and I think that's what came through with what you're talking about. Like they were like, "Hey, here's the definition of how to expand your canopy." So now it's like they don't have to push for that legislatively anymore. Is that
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you're saying?
There's a lot of regulatory bend in the law that's, you know, that allows for DOA or IDOA, especially IDOA and IDFPR to do some real regulatory wrangling. That's I think that there are certain people within that, you know, that there's some political ideas that like these are things you can step on. These are things we'll do legislatively. These are things that you know, even if it's in the law that you could change this regulation, it's in the law that the IDOA could add more licenses. There's no real cap on licenses. It's they could totally expand the number of medical licenses even for growers or dispensaries. IDFBR can. They choose not to because that's a legislative thing. That's protected by a, you know, there's a political backlash if you did something like that. Um, but I just, I think this year we're going to see. I don't know. I don't know. I don't see a lot of
Yeah, I just
big
feel
change.
like
There hasn't been a lot. There's been almost nothing introduced that's interesting.
right. Yeah, I've not seen anything like, oh my God, like that gives me any energy. Like I really wish that because there is this laundry list that everybody that they've been pushing for. Like I'm gonna do it off the top of my head. Uh Curbside for all dispensaries, not just medical, because of course that just came to be permanent. So they want it for
Regulatory wise, yeah,
all. They want medical for all dispensaries, not just,
as it should be.
adult use. They want events and licensing. I'm saying they. It just seems like that's always the push. It's like all the groups that push for things. It seems like this is always the list.
Might see some action around him.
It was craft expansion. There was that transporter like halt thing for a while.
Moratorium,
Yeah, the
which we
moratorium.
passed, which whatever.
Yeah. So, but like you say, I wish they would like kind of like, because that list keeps coming back. I wish they'd like take that list and then put it in a bill with home grow and be like, hey, we want all these things and we wanted them for a while. Could the community just give us this and we'll give you home grow? Like,
I have a feeling you'd just shut this whole damn thing down if they got home grow, bro. You'd
right,
just turn it all off
right.
and just go grow your weed somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I'd be like, folks, we made it.
No plant limit.
Yeah, yeah,
Treat it like tomatoes.
yeah.
Set you up a
Those are
greenhouse.
my dreams. We'll, as you say, with incrementalism, we'll see if we get some like bite-sized version of that. That would even make me happy if we just like,
Your lifetime tomatoes.
yeah, I hope so.
I think so, bro. I think so. My lifetime tomatoes. Yes. Hey,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
What are, obviously there are we could, we have made our opinions on limited license markets versus open license markets time and time again. We've made it clear that we believe that the more people that are
Free
able to
market shall
participate.
prevail.
Exactly. That's just more consumer friendly if you're able to just let people participate and fight for the consumer's dollar.
It's long-term business friendly too. It allows for real businesses to flourish. Competition is important to businesses. The health of a lot of the businesses that are currently in the marijuana, in the entire cannabis, industry is garbage. I mean, a lot. I mean, a lot of these folks don't have profitability. It's pretty shocking. Some of that is tied to 280E. Yet again, I'll give those folks that. But yeah, there's a lot of basic business health that's we're not picking the best people because there's no competing offer, and so
right.
just whoever has the license, that who gets the business, that's it.
Yeah, and it's so crazy that let's do this for a second. What I was about to ask you was, is there anything else, because we talk about open and limited, I at least talk about it all the time, but I do want to just crack into that for a second. I'm curious, since we've paired the idea of market share with social equity in this state, isn't it, I don't know, I don't mean to go back to the conspiracy board, like the Charlie Day meme where he's like drawing the things, but isn't it a crazy coincidence that social equity is apparently the exact same business model that like these big companies that loved the CRTA have, like limited competition? Like, isn't it a crazy coincidence that that is what social equity is apparently?
That's what pays.
Yeah,
I
and
hate to say
I
that.
mean it
You
makes
have to.
sense, but
If
it's
you
just
have
so
stockholders, if I had stockholders that I was, culpable to, I
mhm.
have to do that. I legally am fiduciarily responsible to those people to act like an ass. I really am.
Right.
That's how you get all these sociopath CEOs and stuff. Is like, but that's our version of that. You have to do that. It's part of the business.
I just want to take this conspiracy theory a level deeper just because we're having fun.
Let's do it.
I think that the reason that they're called craft cannabis licenses was just to get people excited about the wrong thing. Like they're like, when's this craft cannabis going to come out, man? This craft. I think they should have, this is what I'm calling them now, small scale cultivation licenses.
Yeah. Micro licenses is what Missouri calls them.
Yeah. I don't even want to
They
call
just
them that
release a
because
bunch of
people are even denote. I know it's unfair. I just hate that people denote quality based off of the name, and it's like, no, let the like.
I mean, yeah, that's the same thing with craft breweries.
I
Though
was
there's a
about
ton
to
of
say
craft
that's where I
breweries
was
that are
like,
not
it's kind of
great.
right.
There's a lot of trash craft breweries too. So it's this idea of like small scale, what it means with the definition and stuff.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, small batches. I assume people think it will mean smaller, which it will mean. It will mean smaller batches, smaller amounts.
Yeah.
So some people tie that word with quality. They should not in this world in any form. Anywhere you see the word craft, please do not tie it to quality anymore. It does not mean that.
Right. Well, and just to kind of round
But
out
there
the
are some quality producers. I want to say that, I've seen a market increase in quality from some of the craft producers that are small scale. Of course, this is going to be, their first showings. So everybody, you put your best foot forward, of course.
right. I was gonna say that stuff we tried at what was it, the Great Harvest by
Yeah. IC Collective.
ICC, yeah, IC
Yeah.
Collective. That
Yes.
was pretty good
Fantastic.
stuff. And like you say,
Fantastic.
then maybe that's the best foot forward or whatever. We'll see if they keep that bar.
Yeah, I've seen some fantastic stuff for them. I'm very interested. They're very interested in like old school genetics and stuff. Gonna bring some headband here. I'm always for that kind of idea. I wish we had a better tax structure yet again. And this is one of those things I say about like reviewing and all those things is like, I wish things were perfect. I wish we had the best possible market in the world, and I wish it was a completely free market. There are a ton of people, obviously, by the amount of weed we sell, that go to dispensaries in this state that are in that market. In the
Yeah.
culture, we do not cater to those people, and we 100% should, because that's how we normalize weed. That's how we get better quality. That's how we get more freedom. Is you bring in the average consumer, you teach them, you help them understand why we're here and what we're doing, and why it's important, and the difference between craft and the difference between rescheduling and all these other millions and millions of other things they should find out about. Um, but we have this idea that like, well, if you go to the dispensary, automatically there's a certain set of people who just completely will, you know, your opinion is invalid. You went to the dispensary.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say about that. This is what I say about that because I don't agree with that opinion. Some people have even attributed that opinion to me. And I will say that my opinion can be a little bit on the nose, but I like to say this so that people realize I'm like throwing myself under the bus in this. So hear me out on this. I choose not to go to the dispensary because I truly do believe that when you go there, typically speaking, just based on the retail fronts that are open and the operators that are there, you could make the argument that you're supporting the continued criminalization of cannabis because of the policies that these companies don't push for. Having said that, I still go to the dispensary. As I told you, I went to the dispensary the other day and got some weed, and I go every once in a while to get like a cartridge. I like cartridges. I like to always have a cartridge, and I don't have a good cartridge guy, and I don't know if I ever will. Like I don't know, it just
Yeah,
feels
that's
better
a
to
hard
get
ask. Yeah.
cartridges from the dispensary. So anyways, the point I make is that I also drink Coca-Cola. I love Coca-Cola, and I'll be damned if I don't have a meal without one.
Oh
Um,
my God, brother, that's so bad for you. Holy shit.
oh, it is. I know, but it's so good. And
It's
but it's
delicious. Cold
also,
Coke on a summer day, bro. Oof.
but they're one of the biggest polluters. Is the point I'm wrapping around to. So I feel awful drinking a Coke. So that's the relation I make is that I drink Coke. I love it, but I also feel a little bad. And that's how I think people should feel about the dispensaries, at least right now.
I don't like
Like
driving
if,
I don't like driving a gas car, but I don't
uh-huh,
have the financial stability to go buy an EV right now. I
right,
live in a very rural setting, so it'd be very difficult for me to do that. And just there's a lot of consumerism guilt you just have to live with.
uh-huh.
Go to any grocery store. You can everything is tied to all kinds of BS. Um,
And
I
I
think
guess I'm just
recognizing that is important too.
right.
I think calling out these companies, and that's why I'm completely honest with a lot of the things I say, about the way the law should be and the way that we should, the way that we should push things is much, much more liberal than we currently have it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think we should recognize that there's a lot of folks that don't even know that. There's a lot of folks who are like, damn, cool, weed's legal. The
Uh-huh.
dispensary's there. And we should appeal to all those people. We should 100%, because appealing to those people and reaching out to them.
Oh, hey, your sound just went out on that last word. You said appealing to those people and reaching out. I'll pause it here just for a second. Sorry about that. The mic cut out for a second. So,
Technical difficulties. Yeah, I think that helping those people understand, that's how we get more weed people to come into our side of thinking. I think that's the benefit of legalization,
yes.
is that it removes that stigma, and us going out there and pursuing those folks is how we get to, the utopian grow it like tomatoes.
I cannot agree more. And there's this project I did that I actually never really released publicly. It's on my Patreon page where I interviewed consumers. And it was so crazy to talk to consumers that, yeah, they're just going to get weed. And I just ask them simple questions like, have you ever shopped anywhere else? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how do you feel that that experience compares to here? And depending on where they've shopped, usually it's like, oh man, this Illinois is kind of weird. And then I'll ask, do you feel like you have like a lot of choices? No, no. But some people will say yes. To say, well, there are plenty of things. There's so many things that I don't even know what to choose. So, but it is like when you start to ask, like, do you feel like what have you typically paid in other markets compared to here? And that's when it's like, well, it's very expensive here. And it's funny, people that have been from Illinois for a while, but they're like, but that's what I expected. I'm from Illinois.
That's
So
Illinois.
it's Illinois.
The
And,
roads suck and everything's costly.
but to your point, when you have their ear there, because it's like, okay, we're on the same page. Did you know that that's almost like a feature of this market? And then they're like, well, of course, they'll either say, of course it is, or they'll go, what? Tell me more, Um, and either way, it's a fun conversation. But I think to your point, just back to you, like, I do believe that that's how we can continue to achieve this normalization. And that's why I'm excited for these like events. Cause were you at the Blue Island? Yeah, you were at the Blue Island
Yeah,
Urban
yeah.
Legends.
You got there at the Urban Legends. I was one of the guest judges.
And I mean, not only the foundation of that event, which shout out to High Focus Media and the Illinois Cannabis Consumer Association. They're one of the only, I have to say, one of the only like advocacy / associations that I'm aware of that like have said they love the idea of home grow and they push for things that are only for the consumer, it feels. I mean, you could say that maybe some of the consumption stuff they're pushing for is also for business owners, but the spirit of it is from the consumer. And so I got to give them kudos. But anyways, that event and things like that, when you get people together and you can kind of talk about the shit we've been talking about, all the shortcomings and everything else, and then you get a circle together and people are going, yeah, that is fucked up.
Yeah.
That's what gets you the energy, like you say, to hopefully make that world where it's like tomatoes.
Yeah. I really do believe we'll get there. I have always felt this way about it. People say, oh, you're so optimistic about the market. Yeah, I have always felt this way about it. That cannabis is on a forward track. And we are, there is a lot further to go, but it's going to take a lot further than everyone thinks. Illinois special, I think we always suffer too from we win early. And so now we will look at all these other states that have much more liberal policies, even Missouri, which I constantly talk about because I'm so involved in their market. But God, it just drives me wild how consumption events, dispensaries, micro grow licenses, infusion license, all these other things, Missouri does better than us. Taxes, allowances. It's just wild how a state that's supposedly conservative just destroys the liberal state on liberalizing cannabis. And yet again, I think that's a reflection of the politicians chose our cannabis laws. The people chose their cannabis laws in Missouri. There's a real, tie up. Yet again, it's one of those Illinois things. That's Illinois.
Yeah, that's Illinois. Well, maybe this is a fun thing to close on that, again, I didn't even think about, but just because I like talking about these topics with you. And we slightly touched on hemp, I think, but I'm curious. I don't know if you read this. I think this is the same reporter that I saw predicted that the rescheduling thing would come out in the next few weeks. They heard word on the street or whatever, and now they're sharing this, which I thought was interesting. If the cannabis industry is looking for the next farm bill to ban intoxicating hemp-derived competitors unleashed I don't know what that means, they may be disappointed. And it's saying that, a farm bill may not, come or include anything like that. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that he said, looking for this, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting prediction. I can't find exactly what I was looking for, but thoughts?
So hemp has always been I've always been super focused on hemp. I really do think there is, you know, that's how we'll backdoor a lot of stuff into the federal government. Um, I I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think there is a thriving, yet again, there's a lot of money that's being produced, and so I think there's a lot of folks that aren't going to have that incentive to change the laws. Farm bill comes up every now and often. So, we got this extension until September 30th of this year before
Yeah.
we pass the new one. So we're currently going through the farm bill takes years to write.
Well,
It's the process of constant talks they're always happening. And then eventually we all get together and we put it all on paper. That's kind of how the farm bill's always worked. These ag committees. And so there's already an idea of what will happen. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's going to be a ton around intoxicating hemp. I do think they're going to push it to the states, though. I think they're going to push that idea that, like, if you want to
right.
ban it, you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was interesting. This kind of adds to your point. Farm Bill isn't the right piece of legislation to tackle intoxicating hemp, and no other agency has their act enough to address a fairly poorly understood niche.
Yep.
Status quo hemp will continue. And this person said what you just said. I tend to agree. I also think federal lawmakers will mostly point to the states passing hemp-based regulations and declare it the state's job. And I don't know if you noticed, but since this, somebody sent me this the other day, since the state hasn't been able to figure out hemp yet. I say figure out, I mean close it down, shut it down. Right.
Yeah.
They're doing it at local levels now, right? Trying to
Yeah.
do local bans.
I've
Kinda.
already seen some very interesting things around, like, yet again, health departments and food production and gummies and certain food products tied in with the whole Delta 8 production. And so there's already been some very, not federal, but local pursuit that I've seen, just based with that kind of thing, where people are told, this has to be approved by us. We don't approve Delta 8. We don't approve any kind of hemp, so you can't sell it because it's not approved. So there you go. And that'll be a health department doing that,
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna jokingly say that let them have Delta 8. I hate saying that though, because that's what a lot of people will say. It's like, just make it illegal, then that's the problem solved. And it's like, I hate making any compound illegal, so I'm just gonna say that. But I was hoping that it was just focused on Delta 8, and it's just like a local regulation. It's like, all right, whatever, we won't sell Delta 8.
It's so ridiculous how it's this much weight and this much is hemp. And like I play a game with people when we get, when I'm over at I work when I'm over behind the counter at the dispensary. I'll talk to some of the folks that work there, and when we get new stuff in, I'll play the game. All right, how much of this is legal hemp? Because you check that Delta 9 number, a lot of it, a lot of the stuff you buy, just completely legal hemp, man. Farm bill. That's what I tell people. If you're ever smoking weed, you're out in public, anybody says anything, just tell them farm bill.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously that's not legal advice, but I have heard.
No, I am not a lawyer.
Yeah, neither of us are lawyers.
I recommend.
But
yeah,
I have heard that even from the state of Illinois themselves, by that I mean the CROO, they've said that when local law enforcement will encounter an individual that has what they're saying is hemp, they just kind of let them go because it's kind of on the law enforcement to prove that. And I was just speaking to some lawyers about this issue, and from what I hear, the state doesn't really have a way to prove that. Like I'm aware of the Illinois Department of Agriculture. They're building a lab. Last I heard, that's not complete yet. But even from what I understand and who I've talked to, even if that was complete, that's the Illinois Department of Agriculture's lab. And according to what I understand, which I'm just gonna keep this short because I'm sure there's a lot I don't understand. since agencies can't share information, I don't know that the Illinois State Police could be like, yo, could we use your cannabis lab? We're trying to test if this is hemp. And
there'd probably be another level of legislation that would have to be passed in order for that to happen. And so, yeah, that's one of the things around legal hemp is that to round back where we started on this whole thing about consumption being in a gray area, that's where hemp is right now. You're in this gray area. There are a lot of things that technically are allowed. And I implore people to look into hemp and the farm bill and the things that are currently allowed, but just the current understanding of what chemistry is going on the plant is very fascinating, because there's a lot of freedom that we really aren't talking about right now. There's a lot of folks that are still complaining about how lock things down. A lot of folks don't understand the things that you can currently do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think THCA is the biggest misunderstanding. Like, people are really missing out because it's just weed.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, if you're growing weed at home right now, you got THCA weed growing.
You can make most any weed THCA by pulling it a little bit early.
Yeah. Well, and what Tom Howard told us is actually what some of these people are doing is technically, I guess, the or the farm bill only requires that you test at least 30 days before harvest. So if you're really in tune with your plant, and a lot of home growers are, or just growers, I don't mean to say home growers, but they will test that 30 days before harvest. And I guess in the last, I don't remember what Tom Howard says, but it's the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks, something like some crazy number of the cannabinoids actually develop.
Yeah, so especially with outdoor plants, that's where that last window is where terpene development really stretches out. But yeah, very complicated levels of terpenes happen in those last little bits. And so yeah, if you're testing a little bit early, it's just THCA.
Yeah, and back to that point I was going to make about hemp, like you said, with freedom. I think it's just funny to watch some attorneys react to this. When I was reviewing this footage the other night when I was editing, I just honestly laughed at this to see them. One attorney was aware of hemp, but the other attorney wasn't quite aware. So I just want to show you their candid reaction and hearing about this hemp situation, right?
Hemp.
So,
yeah.
With my other 2 quick points, the state recently said, and by the state I mean the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Officer, who was appointed by J.B. Pritzker, said that local law enforcement has been hesitant to deal with people that have been caught with what they claim is hemp. They don't know what to do with it, so they just send them on their way. And I'm just thinking, that's kind of a win. For once, police aren't able to harass you just because you say it's hemp, and then they're like, oh gosh, I don't want to go to the lengths of having to prove that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, I raised it in one of my cases involving 2 pounds.
Yeah.
It begs the question, why are we doing any of this? What's the point? It's like
because it's $1 billion industry for the state, and because the state wants to protect its revenue stream that it's getting from the legalized sale at dispensaries. That's why.
Yeah, I mean,
that was the look of a man who was very excited and had some cases in mind that he was going to go look up some books for, because holy shit.
Yeah.
you just blew his mind.
And not to, well, yeah, that actually was the moment after he literally was like, because I said, oh, you can just slap a THCA sticker on and then you're all good. Because we were debating the Supreme Court case, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's funny that all the while this is going on, and there's this big debate about containers. Like, there's no all you got to do, and I say it kind of jokingly, but you just put this sticker on and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it was funny in that exchange what I meant to play. It was a few moments before that. I'm not gonna go back to play it, but he was like, "Wait, is that real?" And Attorney Galholtra and I took the time to explain, the difference between hemp and cannabis. And that's when he was like, "So why are we doing this at all?" And I just thought that was a hilarious reaction, because exactly why, like you say, the solution's right here. It's hemp for victory.
Yeah, but if you explain that to people, how simple it is, it just blows their mind.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. And it's because it's so arbitrary. I think that's what it is. And I think that's how it passed. It was just like
Yeah,
somebody got into
100%.
they're like, well, it's 0.03 and or point 0.3 and blah blah blah. And people are just like, yeah, whatever, just make it.
All the confusion around Delta 9 and THCA and THC is kind of an indictment of the American education system around science and how compounds work and that whole problem and it not just people but all the way to the upper reaches of government do not understand the compounds, so
Yeah.
right now that's for our benefit. So
Yeah, I'm gonna show one more moment because I just realized this next like 15 seconds is funny, and then I want you to try to make us end on a positive note somehow after this, because this
optimism.
is I don't get optimistic after watching this clip.
All right,
Bruno,
show me.
like, what's the outlook on repealing the Cannabis Control Act of 1978? What's the outlook on making things like home grow legal and removing arcane ideas of possession limits? Bob, do you still feel like the chances are low because that's a competitor to their revenue stream?
Big time. There's no way the General Assembly is going to fall for that.
What about you, Attorney Bruno? Do you think meaningful reform, as you refer to it as, is seen as competition to the bottom line of the state and these operators?
Of course, yeah. It would have been easier to do 10 years ago than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I feel like you kind of already addressed this point, so maybe it'll be an easy swing for you, but how do we end this on an optimistic note?
So I'm going to spin this back to a comparison I made earlier in the
Yeah.
episode about the alcohol industry and about how impossibly difficult. This is the reason that there were almost no true craft breweries, and the real the real explosion didn't happen until the 2000s. There was a lot of federal and state regulation around getting a brewery license. It was almost impossible because it was tied up, and there was this idea that it was all about taxes, cost thousands of dollars to get a true brewery license in the state.
Yeah.
And so all these small businesses couldn't afford it. Yet again, this is incrementalism. Right now, yeah, 100%. I agree with them. In the next 3-4 years, 100%. I agree. But if you asked me or you asked them in 2010 or in 2008, is it going to be legal in Illinois? How soon, does it look like it's going to happen? No, not at all. When it hadn't happened in Colorado, it hadn't happened recreationally anywhere. Is it going to happen here? Not at all. No, I don't see that happening. 100%. If you go back and ask the same question about recreational ever happening, a lot of folks would say it would never happen. And so yet again, this perspective about the future is just like so impossible to predict. And it'll take time, but I think people will be surprised by what we get.
Yeah.
Yet again, we'll get to tomatoes.
Yeah. And I didn't think about the fact that we saw the expansion of craft brewing in our lifetimes. That was a really cool thing.
From a nothing, zero. I was super passionate about beer for years. I was a sommelier in a past life, before all the cannabis and retail and all the fun things I've done. But yeah, it was fascinating that we went from almost no craft breweries in the entire country to a very small handful throughout the 80s and 90s. And then when the federal government made it easier to start a craft brewery legislatively and gave that power over to the states, then the industry expanded. Billions of dollars yet again happened. And we'll see that kind of growth eventually. The levee will break with the states and the way that we do things. And I believe we'll eventually get it off the schedule, and it'll probably be under the ATF umbrella yet again. And that's how we get it down. It's going to take longer than people think, but there's this idea, and this is what I tell people. This is the positive thing that I tell people all the time, is like people think that legalization was the end, that we got there and this is what we got, and this is how it's going to be, and that's why people complain constantly, and that's but legalization was the beginning. Legalization was the start of what we're going to do over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And eventually, if this is where we're at right now, we can only go up from here. So I really do think that the future is very bright for cannabis. And
Oh yeah. That is a good optimistic note, and not just to add a few more points to what I think you were saying. We get incremental progress in weird ways sometimes. Like, I didn't know this when I brought it up one time, but I would bring up Jimmy Carter as how we got like home brew. But
Yeah.
I think somebody added an anecdote. I don't know that it's true, so you can like research it. Maybe you don't know that it's true. I'm just gonna float it real quick. They said that he may have, or that may have become a thing because his son kind of got in trouble with homebrewing or something like that. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
I think it was like his brother. I think it was Billy
Or his
Beer,
brother,
there was a
yeah,
whole that
something like
thing.
that. Yeah.
I remember, I gotta go look this up because I remember my dad having these cans of Billy Beer forever on the shelf that was like, and I asked him one year, he's like, that was the president's brother. And I'm like, what the?
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds about
Yeah.
right. So yeah, folks, look into that. But it's funny how history repeats itself. Because I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens again. I even actually did
Yeah.
hear an allegation of something like that happening in New Jersey. Some representative put forth Pennsylvania. I don't know. They put forth a home grow bill, and somebody found that one of their like their son or something like that had been charged with home growing. But as soon as their charges were taken away, they like completely dropped the issue of home grow altogether. Like, well, we don't need that. That's
Yeah, of course.
anyways
No,
though.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks who don't
But we
understand the
might get
situation
some
until it touches them
progress.
personally.
We just need to bust. We just need to bust politicians' sons, relatives with these offenses, so that we can.
Yeah. I
Right?
think everyone needs to smoke a J. I think
I'm just
that,
joking.
I think that's how we get it legal. I think everybody that is of age, that desires so, should smoke a joint and understand the stigma's gone. And I think that's how we get it legal.
That's a note we can end on. Everybody should smoke a joint. Let's do that.
Fuck yeah, brother. Fuck yeah.
Cheers, everybody. I hope you found as much value in this conversation as I did. Lasley, thank you so much for your time and for the great conversation. We'll see you in the next
Brother,
episode of the
always.
Cole Memo.
Thanks,
Take care.
man.